He was a quiet man who lived a simple and predictable life. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, made himself a cup of tea, and stood by the small window of his apartment watching the streets slowly come alive. He liked routine because it made the world feel safe and understandable. He worked as a translator for an international company, spending most of his days reading and writing alone. His job required focus, patience, and attention to detail, qualities he had developed over many years. People who knew him described him as kind but distant. He was polite to everyone, but he rarely allowed others to come too close. He believed life was easier when emotions stayed calm and controlled. While some of his friends chased adventure or dramatic experiences, he preferred peaceful evenings with books or quiet walks in the park. He did not believe strongly in fate or destiny. To him, life was shaped by choices and effort, not mysterious signs. One weekend, his company encouraged employees to attend a cultural festival held in a historic town several hours away. At first, he did not want to go. Large gatherings made him uncomfortable, and he preferred familiar places. But after some persuasion from a colleague, he decided to travel there for a change of scenery. He packed lightly and took the early train, watching fields and small villages pass by through the window. When he arrived, the town felt alive with color and energy. Music echoed through the streets, and people from different backgrounds gathered to celebrate traditions. Stalls displayed handmade crafts, traditional clothing, and foods from many cultures. The air carried a mix of laughter and conversation. He walked slowly through the crowd, observing everything quietly. Even though he felt slightly out of place, he appreciated the chance to see something new. As he moved from one stall to another, he noticed groups of performers sharing dances and storytelling. One area of the festival focused on spiritual traditions and ancestral customs. He paused there out of curiosity, listening as elders explained old beliefs about dreams, symbols, and the meaning of life events. While he did not fully understand or agree with everything, he found it interesting how deeply people valued these traditions. Later in the afternoon, he stepped away from the crowd and sat near a fountain to rest. He checked his phone, answered a few messages, and enjoyed the quiet moment. That was when he felt someone standing nearby. He looked up and saw a young woman watching him with a serious expression. Her eyes were focused and calm, as if she had been searching for something and finally found it. She approached slowly and greeted him politely. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. After a brief moment of silence, she said something unexpected. She told him that she recognized him, not from real life, but from dreams she had experienced many times. According to her, she had seen his face clearly long before they met. She spoke with certainty, as if she had rehearsed the words many times. He felt confused and unsure how to respond. At first, he thought she might be joking or confusing him with someone else. He politely explained that they had never met before, but she gently shook her head. She insisted that she knew who he was and that their meeting had meaning. Her sincerity made it difficult for him to dismiss her words completely. He tried to remain calm and respectful. Instead of arguing, he asked her to sit down so they could talk. She agreed, and they sat near the fountain while people continued moving around them. She explained that she came from a community where dreams were considered important messages. In her culture, some dreams were believed to guide major life decisions. She said she had seen him in several dreams, each one becoming clearer over time. The man listened carefully, unsure whether to feel concerned or fascinated. He had never experienced anything like this before. Part of him wanted to stand up and leave, but another part felt curious about her story. She did not seem confused or unstable. Instead, she appeared thoughtful and deeply convinced. Her calmness made him stay longer than he expected. She described how, in her dreams, she saw a man standing near water, someone quiet and thoughtful who listened more than he spoke. She said she remembered details like his posture and the way he watched the world around him. When she saw him sitting by the fountain, she felt certain he was the same person. He laughed nervously, unsure how to react. He told her that many people might look similar and that dreams could easily create strong feelings that were not connected to reality. She listened without becoming defensive. Instead, she explained that she understood his doubt and did not expect immediate belief. She only wanted him to hear her story. As they continued talking, he learned that she had traveled to the festival with members of her community. They had come to share cultural practices and meet people from different backgrounds. She spoke about her family, her education, and her interest in understanding both traditional and modern perspectives. The more he listened, the more he realized she was intelligent and thoughtful. Time passed quickly as they talked. He found himself asking questions, not because he believed her claim, but because he wanted to understand her worldview. She described how elders in her community taught that dreams sometimes symbolized future connections or lessons people needed to learn. She admitted that she had struggled with whether to approach him, fearing he might react negatively. He appreciated her honesty. Even though he remained skeptical, he respected her courage. He told her about his own life, his work, his preference for routine, and his belief that people shape their own paths through decisions rather than destiny. Their conversation became less about proving who was right and more about sharing experiences. As evening approached, the festival lights began to glow softly. Music played in the distance, and the atmosphere felt warmer and more relaxed. The man realized he had spent hours talking with someone he had met only that day. This surprised him because he rarely opened up to strangers, yet something about her presence felt peaceful rather than overwhelming. Before they parted, she said something that stayed in his mind long after. She told him she did not expect him to accept her beliefs immediately. She only believed their meeting was meaningful and hoped they could continue talking. She gave him a small piece of paper with her contact information, smiling gently. He walked back to his hotel feeling thoughtful and unsettled. He replayed the conversation in his mind, trying to understand why it affected him so strongly. Part of him dismissed it as coincidence, but another part wondered whether some encounters happened for reasons beyond simple explanation. That night, as he sat by the window of his room, he looked down at the busy streets filled with festival visitors. He felt a quiet shift inside himself, not belief but curiosity. For the first time in a long while, his routine had been interrupted by something unexpected. He did not know what it meant yet, but he sensed that the meeting was only the beginning of a story he could not fully predict. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual, even though he had slept late. The conversation from the festival would not leave his mind. He stood by the window of his hotel room and watched the sun rise over the old buildings. The town looked peaceful, but his thoughts felt restless. He was not used to unexpected events. His life was built on logic and careful decisions. What happened the day before did not fit into that pattern. He told himself it was only a strange coincidence. People sometimes imagine connections when there are none, yet he could not ignore the calm certainty in her voice. She had not spoken like someone trying to impress or confuse him. She had spoken like someone sharing something deeply personal. That difference made it harder for him to dismiss her words completely. He spent the morning walking through the festival again, but everything felt slightly different now. He found himself looking at the cultural stalls more carefully. He listened more closely when elders explained old traditions. He noticed symbols drawn on fabrics and carved into wood. He began to understand that for many people here, dreams were not simple stories created by the mind. They were treated as messages, sometimes guiding important life choices. By midday, he finally sent her a short message. He did not know exactly what to say, so he kept it simple. He thanked her for the conversation and said he would like to understand more about her culture. He did not mention marriage or destiny. He only asked if they could talk again before he left town. She replied quickly. Her message was polite and warm. She said she appreciated his willingness to listen and invited him to visit a gathering where her community members were sharing their traditions. She made it clear there was no pressure. He could simply observe and ask questions. He hesitated for a few minutes before agreeing. A part of him felt nervous. Meeting her alone had been one thing, meeting her community was another. But he also felt that avoiding the situation would leave him with unanswered questions. He decided that understanding was better than running away. That afternoon, he followed the directions she sent and arrived at a quiet courtyard behind one of the historic buildings. A small group of people sat in a circle, speaking calmly. Some were young, others older. The atmosphere was respectful and welcoming. When she saw him, she stood up and introduced him to the group. There was no dramatic reaction, only polite smiles and nods. He relaxed slightly. No one treated him as if he had already agreed to anything. Instead, they spoke about the meaning of dreams in their tradition. An elder explained that dreams were considered reflections of the soul's journey. Some dreams were ordinary, but others were believed to hold symbolic guidance. However, even in their belief system, interpretation required patience and wisdom. Nothing was decided without careful thought. Hearing this surprised him. He had expected strong pressure or firm rules. Instead, he heard balanced words. The elder even said that dreams should never force someone into a choice. They could suggest a direction, but personal agreement and understanding were always necessary. After the gathering ended, he and the woman walked slowly through a quieter part of town. The afternoon sun was soft, and the noise of the festival felt distant. He asked her honestly why she felt so certain about him. She paused before answering, choosing her words carefully. She explained that for years she had struggled with feeling disconnected. She respected her culture but also questioned parts of it. Then the dreams began. At first they were unclear, but over time she saw a man who seemed calm and steady. She said the dreams did not show a wedding or a dramatic event. They showed conversations, quiet support, and partnership. She believed the dreams were not about romance alone, but about balance in her life. He listened quietly. Her explanation felt more human and less mysterious than before. It sounded less like destiny controlling her and more like her searching for stability. He told her honestly that he feared making decisions based on emotions alone. He had always believed that commitment required time and shared experience. She nodded in agreement. She admitted that approaching him so directly might have sounded extreme, but she felt she would regret staying silent if she ignored what she believed was important. She said she did not expect him to accept her claim immediately. She only wanted the chance to explore whether the connection was real beyond the dream. As they talked, he began to feel the weight of expectation growing around them. Some people from her community had noticed his presence at the gathering. While no one said anything openly, he sensed curiosity. He wondered how much they knew about her dreams. Did they believe he was already chosen, or were they waiting to see what would happen? That evening, he returned to his hotel again, thinking deeply. He realized the situation was no longer just about a strange statement at a fountain. It was about culture, belief, and the possibility of building something meaningful. He asked himself an important question. Was he rejecting the idea because it was wrong or because it was unfamiliar? The following day was his last in the town. He considered leaving quietly without meeting her again. That would return everything to normal. But normal suddenly felt incomplete. He sent her another message, asking to meet once more before he departed. They met at a small cafe near the train station. The place was simple and peaceful. As they sat across from each other, he decided to be honest about his confusion. He told her he respected her courage and her beliefs, but he could not promise anything based only on dreams. He needed time to know her as a real person, not as a symbol from her sleep. She listened carefully and did not look disappointed. Instead, she seemed relieved. She said she also wanted something real, not just an idea. She believed the dream might have been a starting point, not a final decision. What mattered now was whether they could build trust and understanding step by step. Their conversation felt more equal now. The tension from their first meeting had softened. He saw her not as someone controlled by tradition, but as someone trying to balance heritage with personal choice. She saw him not as a man refusing destiny, but as someone careful and thoughtful. When it was time for him to leave, they walked together to the train platform. The air felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. He realized that despite his doubts, he did not want this to be the end. He told her they could continue speaking from a distance. He suggested learning about each other slowly, without pressure from anyone else. She agreed. Before the train arrived, she said something gentle but meaningful. She said sometimes destiny is not about forcing two people together. Sometimes it is about creating a moment that changes how they see themselves. As the train began to move, he looked out the window and saw her standing calmly on the platform. He felt a mixture of uncertainty and quiet hope. He still did not believe completely in sacred signs, but he could not deny that this meeting had already begun to change him. For the first time in many years, his carefully planned life felt open to something unpredictable. He did not know where this path would lead. But he knew one thing clearly: the story was far from over. After returning to his city, he expected life to return to normal quickly. The familiar streets, the quiet apartment, and the steady rhythm of work surrounded him again. At first, everything looked the same, but inside, something had shifted. He found himself thinking about her more often than he expected. Small moments during the day reminded him of their conversations. The way she spoke about dreams with calm confidence, the thoughtful way she listened when he expressed doubts, and the peaceful feeling he experienced when they talked without pressure. He tried to focus on work as usual. Documents filled his screen, deadlines arrived, and colleagues spoke about everyday matters. Yet during short breaks, he caught himself checking his phone, wondering if she had sent a message. Sometimes she had, sometimes she had not. Their conversations through messages felt natural and easy. They spoke about ordinary things, favorite foods, books, memories from childhood, rather than heavy topics. Slowly, the connection moved away from the unusual beginning toward something more human and real. One evening, she asked him how he felt after returning home. He admitted that he felt confused but curious. He told her he had never experienced anything like their meeting before and was still unsure how to interpret it. She replied honestly that she also felt uncertain. She said the dream had given her courage to approach him, but now she wanted to know him without expectations. As days turned into weeks, they began speaking through video calls. Seeing her face in familiar surroundings helped him feel more relaxed. He noticed small details he had missed before, how she smiled when talking about her family, how she paused to choose her words carefully, and how she laughed quietly rather than loudly. These simple moments made her feel less like a mysterious figure from a dream and more like a person he could understand. During one conversation, he asked her about the dreams again. He wanted to know whether she still believed they meant they should be together. She thought for a long moment before answering. She said the dreams felt important but not absolute. She admitted that when she first saw him at the festival, she felt certain about what they meant. Now, after getting to know him better, she realized that meaning could change. Perhaps the dream had been a guide leading her toward growth rather than a fixed promise. Her honesty surprised him. He had expected her to defend the idea strongly, but instead she showed flexibility and reflection. This made him respect her even more. He began to realize that she was not trying to control his choices. She was simply sharing her perspective. Meanwhile, he decided to learn more about her culture on his own. He read articles about dream symbolism in different traditions and watched interviews with people who believed dreams held personal meaning. Some explanations sounded spiritual, while others described dreams as reflections of subconscious thoughts. He did not suddenly change his beliefs, but he started seeing how dreams could influence people emotionally, giving them courage or direction. One weekend, he visited a small cultural center in his own city where people shared stories from around the world. He listened to discussions about identity and tradition. For the first time, he felt less distant from these ideas. Instead of judging them quickly, he tried to understand why people found comfort in them. Their relationship continued growing slowly. They shared stories about challenges they faced in the past. He spoke about times when he avoided close relationships because he feared losing control over his carefully planned life. She spoke about feeling divided between modern independence and traditional expectations. These honest conversations created trust between them. However, not everything felt simple. Sometimes he wondered if he was being pulled into something too complicated. He worried about differences in culture, distance, and expectations from her community. He asked himself whether he was ready for such a big change in his life. At moments, he considered stepping back to protect his sense of stability. One evening, after a long day at work, he almost decided to stop communicating for a while. He felt overwhelmed by thoughts about the future. But before sending any message, he paused and asked himself an important question. Was he afraid because something was wrong or because something was new? That question made him reconsider. Instead of withdrawing, he chose honesty. During their next call, he shared his fears openly. He told her that he enjoyed talking to her but worried about expectations growing too quickly. He did not want either of them to feel pressured. She listened carefully and thanked him for being honest. She admitted that she also felt pressure from people around her who were curious about their connection. This conversation became a turning point. They agreed to move forward without labels or promises. They would simply continue learning about each other as friends first. Removing the pressure allowed both of them to relax. Their talks became lighter again, filled with laughter and shared experiences. As time passed, he noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt more open to conversations with others, more willing to step outside routine. He started exploring new places in his city and even joined a local book group to meet new people. He realized that meeting her had encouraged him to grow beyond his comfort zone. One night, she told him about a new dream she had experienced. Unlike the earlier ones, this dream did not show a clear image of him. Instead, it showed a path stretching into the distance, with two figures walking side by side. She said the dream made her feel peaceful rather than certain. She believed it represented choice rather than destiny. He found that interpretation meaningful. It allowed him to see their connection as something evolving rather than predetermined. For the first time, he felt less resistant to the idea that some encounters might hold deeper significance, even if not controlled by fate. Weeks later, they began discussing the possibility of meeting again in person. The idea excited and frightened him at the same time. He wondered whether the calm connection they built through conversations would feel the same face to face. Yet he also felt ready to see where this journey might lead. As he ended another late-night call, he sat quietly in his apartment, thinking about how much had changed since that day at the festival. What started as confusion had turned into curiosity, and curiosity had slowly grown into trust. He still did not believe completely in sacred laws or dreams guiding destiny, but he no longer dismissed the possibility that some meetings carried meaning beyond simple coincidence. For the first time in many years, he felt like he was walking toward something unknown without fear. The story between them was still unfolding, shaped by choices rather than assumptions. And somewhere deep inside, he sensed that the next step would challenge both of them in ways they could not yet imagine. As weeks passed, their conversations became a natural part of his daily routine. He no longer checked his phone with nervous curiosity. Instead, he looked forward to hearing about her day and sharing his own experiences. The distance between them still existed, but emotionally they felt closer than before. What started as an unusual meeting now felt like a meaningful connection built on patience and honesty. Eventually, they agreed to meet again in person. This time, the meeting felt different. The first encounter had been filled with surprise and uncertainty, but now they approached it with understanding. They chose a quiet city halfway between their homes, a place known for calm streets, small cafes, and parks where people walked slowly and talked freely. When he arrived, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wondered if the connection they built through calls and messages would feel real face to face. As he waited near a fountain in the center of the town square, he noticed how similar the moment felt to their first meeting. The memory made him smile. When she appeared, walking toward him with a gentle expression, he felt relief. The comfort he experienced during their conversations returned immediately. They greeted each other warmly and began walking through the town together. There was no pressure, no dramatic moment, only two people reconnecting after weeks of shared conversations. They spent the day exploring small shops, visiting local markets, and sitting in quiet spaces where they could talk without interruption. He noticed how natural their communication had become. They no longer needed to discuss dreams or destiny constantly. Instead, they spoke about life goals, personal growth, and the future they imagined for themselves. During lunch, she asked him an honest question. She wanted to know whether he still felt uncertain about the meaning of their meeting. He paused before answering, choosing his words carefully. He said he still believed that relationships should grow through shared experiences rather than predetermined ideas. However, he admitted that their connection felt special because it had encouraged both of them to grow. She smiled and said she felt the same. The dream had given her courage, but now she understood that real relationships required effort and choice. She told him she no longer saw the dream as a command or rule. Instead, she saw it as a moment that brought two people together who might never have met otherwise. Later that afternoon, they sat in a quiet park under tall trees. The sunlight moved gently through the leaves, creating a peaceful atmosphere. He realized that this calm feeling was different from the excitement he expected at the beginning of their story. It felt deeper and more stable, built on understanding rather than mystery. However, challenges soon appeared. She shared that some members of her community still believed strongly in the original meaning of her dream. They felt that if two people were connected through such visions, they should follow tradition and commit quickly. She explained that she respected her culture but wanted to make decisions based on real understanding, not pressure. Hearing this made him concerned. He worried that expectations from others might create tension between them. He told her honestly that he did not want to become a symbol or idea within someone else's belief system. He wanted to be accepted as himself, not as a role defined by tradition. She listened carefully and reassured him that she felt the same. She wanted their relationship to be shaped by mutual respect. She said she was learning to balance tradition with personal freedom, even if it meant facing criticism from some people around her. Their honest discussion created a turning point. For the first time, they openly acknowledged the difficulties ahead. Instead of pretending everything would be easy, they accepted that differences in background and belief required patience. This honesty strengthened their trust rather than weakening it. Over the next few days, they continued spending time together. They attended a small cultural event where she introduced him to friends who knew about her dreams but respected her personal choices. He felt welcomed, not judged. Conversations focused on shared interests rather than expectations. This experience helped him feel more comfortable with her world. One evening, as they walked along a quiet river, she asked him another important question. She wanted to know what he felt when he thought about the future. He stopped for a moment and looked at the water moving slowly beside them. He admitted that before meeting her, he rarely thought about long-term emotional connections. His life had been safe but limited. Now he felt curious about building something meaningful, even if it required stepping into uncertainty. She shared her own thoughts. She said she had once believed destiny would make decisions simple. Now she understood that real growth came from choosing each step together. She no longer felt pressure to follow a fixed path. Instead, she felt grateful for the chance to explore life with openness. Their conversation felt calm and honest. There was no dramatic declaration, only a quiet understanding that their relationship had moved beyond its unusual beginning. They were no longer strangers connected by a dream. They were two people choosing to learn from each other. Before they parted at the end of the visit, they agreed to continue moving slowly. Neither wanted to rush into labels or promises. Instead, they wanted to build a foundation based on trust, communication, and shared experiences. As he returned home, he reflected on how much had changed since the festival. He realized that the most important transformation had not been about belief in destiny, but about openness to connection. He had learned to listen without judgment, and she had learned to balance faith with personal choice. Days later, during a quiet evening call, she told him that her community had started to accept her decision to take things slowly. Some people still held traditional views, but others supported her independence. This change gave both of them relief. Their relationship now felt stronger because it was no longer driven by expectation. It was shaped by understanding and mutual respect. The mysterious beginning had led them to a deeper truth, that meaningful connections grow through patience, honesty, and shared growth. As he sat alone after the call ended, he realized that the turning point in their story had already happened. They had moved from uncertainty to clarity, from pressure to choice. And for the first time, he felt ready to see where the journey would lead, not because of dreams or sacred laws, but because of the bond they had built together step by step. Time continued to move forward, but now it felt different for both of them. What began as a strange and surprising meeting had slowly turned into something steady and meaningful. There was no rush, no pressure, only a quiet understanding that they were walking the same path by choice. Months passed, and they continued visiting each other whenever their schedules allowed. Each meeting felt more natural than the last. They no longer focused on the story of the dream as the center of their connection. Instead, they focused on everyday moments, cooking meals together, taking long walks, talking about their work, and sharing simple laughter. One evening, while sitting on the balcony of his apartment, she looked out at the city lights and spoke softly. She said she had been thinking about how much her understanding of destiny had changed. Before meeting him, she believed destiny was something fixed, like a rule written in advance. Now she saw it differently. She believed destiny might simply create opportunities. What people did with those opportunities was their own choice. He listened carefully. Her words reflected the journey they had taken together. He told her that he still believed life was shaped by decisions, but he also accepted that some encounters were rare and meaningful. Meeting her had opened a door in his life that he might never have noticed otherwise. Their families slowly became aware of their growing connection. At first, there were questions from both sides. Some people wondered whether differences in culture and belief would create problems. Others were simply curious about how their unusual beginning had turned into something serious. They handled these conversations with patience. Instead of arguing or defending themselves strongly, they explained their journey calmly. They described how their relationship was built on respect and understanding rather than pressure. Over time, the questions became fewer, replaced by quiet acceptance. One afternoon, they decided to visit the same festival where they first met. It had been almost a year since that unexpected day by the fountain. As they walked through the colorful streets again, the memory felt both distant and close at the same time. He smiled when he saw the same fountain still standing in the center of the square. They sat down together on the bench nearby. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply watched people walking past, just as they had done before. Finally, she broke the silence and said she never imagined that one bold sentence would lead to such a journey. He laughed softly. He admitted that when she first approached him, he almost walked away. But something inside him had told him to stay and listen. That small decision had changed everything. She told him she had another dream recently. This time, the dream was simple. She saw the two of them sitting beside water, not as strangers, not as symbols, but as partners sharing peace. The dream did not feel like a command. It felt like a reflection of the life they were already building. He did not question the meaning. Instead, he simply held her hand and said that whether dreams were signs or reflections, what mattered was the reality they were creating together. As the months continued, they began discussing practical plans for the future. They talked about where they might live, how they would balance their careers, and how they would respect each other's traditions. These conversations were not dramatic or emotional. They were calm and thoughtful, built on trust. He noticed that he was no longer afraid of change. In the past, he avoided deep connections because he feared losing control of his peaceful routine. Now, he understood that growth required stepping into uncertainty. Instead of losing control, he felt stronger and more confident. She also felt different. Before meeting him, she sometimes struggled between honoring tradition and following her own voice. Now, she felt balanced. She still respected her culture, but she no longer felt controlled by it. She understood that true belief allowed room for choice. One evening, during a quiet dinner at home, he asked her a simple question. He asked whether she still believed that sacred law had brought them together. She thought for a long moment before answering. She said she believed the dream had been a starting point, like a door opening unexpectedly. But she believed the real connection was built by listening, patience, and shared effort. Without those, the dream would have meant nothing. Her answer made him realize something important. The story of their meeting would always be unique, but the strength of their relationship came from ordinary actions, honest conversations, respect during disagreements, and willingness to grow together. Eventually, they decided to take a step forward in their commitment. It was not a sudden or dramatic decision. It came naturally after months of shared experiences. When they told their families, the reactions were warm and supportive. What once seemed unusual now felt clear and steady. On the evening they announced their engagement, they returned once more to the quiet park near the river where they had once spoken about the future. The water moved slowly, just as it had before. He remembered the fear he once felt about stepping into something unknown. Now that fear had been replaced with calm confidence. She looked at him and said she was grateful she had followed her dream that day at the festival, not because it guaranteed anything, but because it gave her courage. He told her he was grateful he had chosen to listen instead of dismissing her words. Their journey had taught both of them something powerful. Destiny might open a door, but people decide whether to walk through it. Dreams might inspire courage, but real relationships require daily effort. Tradition might guide, but personal choice gives meaning. As they stood together watching the river flow, they understood that their story was not about a rule or a sign. It was about two people who chose to understand each other despite differences. It was about patience replacing pressure and trust replacing doubt. Years later, when they told friends how they met, people often reacted with surprise and curiosity. Some laughed gently at the unusual beginning. Others asked whether they truly believed in destiny. They would smile and give the same answer every time. They believed in choice. They believed in courage. And most of all, they believed that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the most meaningful journeys. What started as a bold statement by a fountain had grown into a life built on understanding. And in the end, that was the true meaning behind the dream, not a rule to follow, but a chance to begin.